Anyone who needs sign language, please come up to the front here. Sit up in the front. Anyone who requires sign language, there's some seats for you up in the front.
Very tired, old and worn out man, and my eyes have long been blind. Most things that people say to me just seem to slip my mind. Oh, but the suffering and painful times that were in years long gone are still as clear upon my memory as the numbers on my arm. What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze? Who will stand before the world knowing what to say when the very last survivor fades away?
When I hold my grandson close to me and his fingers trace the pattern of my tears, he asks me, Zayda, tell me, why do you cry? What is it that you fear? Oh, and I tell him there once was another child who smelled this sweet and felt this warm, but he was taken from before my eyes, and only I remain to mourn. What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze? And who will stand before a world that now wishes to deny? How will they believe in someone never heard the cry? Never heard the cries. There is little I can say or do to make things change. Time has a way of passing by so fast, like a fleeting shadow no one will recall the faces of the past. What will become of all the memories? Are they to scatter with the dust in the breeze? Yet one thought gives me comfort. It's all that I have left. Oh, I know that God in heaven won't forget. Won't forget.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to apologize for those of you who stood for a long time outside, and there will be some more people coming in as we start. My name is Rabbi Yisrael Hahn, and on behalf of Chabad of Spokane, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Survival and Triumph, an encounter with Joseph Alexander, the man who survived 12 concentration camps during the Holocaust and World War II. I'd like to take this opportunity and to thank those who helped make this evening possible: Avista Cooperation, Innovia Foundation, Washington Trust, and Holly Troxell Law Firm for their co-sponsorship, Black Ambassador Chauffeur for their transportation, and Davenport Hotel for their stay. I also want to thank our very talented musicians. I hope I could pronounce the names accurately. Matisyu Waleski Amanda Howells, Howard Phillips, Jeanette Weyoung, and Helen Byrne. Thank you so much for that beautiful rendition of Schindler's List theme and for the Anim Amin that we're going to hear towards the end of tonight's program. Looking around this room, almost filled to capacity, I think this speaks volumes of our Spokane community, Jew and Gentile alike, showing up in such strong numbers in such an important event. It is encouraging, heartening, and uplifting. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much. There are many reasons why someone would come for an event like tonight. A lot of us want to hear the story of Joe Alexander and learn from his story lessons in our lives. Hear the experiences he endured during this very dark chapter in human history. And perhaps more importantly, if each of us can walk away tonight with just a little, perhaps a tiny bit, of the spirit of resilience that enabled Joe Alexander not only to survive his many trials and tribulations, but to thrive and triumph in their aftermath, and perhaps to utilize that in our personal life. This can be a life-changing experience. As we listen to Joe's story, and we try to wrap our heads against this monumental scope of cruelty that happened, that would either directly perpetrated or tactically tolerated by supposedly civilized nations. This should perhaps give us a pause and get us thinking about some basic moral and societal truth. You see, in the wake of the scientific revolution and age of enlightenment, by the time the 20th century came around, many people were convinced that human reason had progressed so far along that there was no longer a need to defer to higher authority for moral guidance and direction. We have become so advanced, so cultured and refined that our instincts alone could be relied to affect and maintain a decent, civilized society. My mentor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory, Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, said that the Holocaust should shatter that notion once and for all. After all, Germany in the 1930s was considered one of the most cultured, enlightened, and advanced societies of its time. They were in the forefront of art, music, science, philosophy, industry, technology. And yet, what did they do with all that ingenuity, with that talent, that wealth? What did the Third Reich choose to invest this incredible resources and capabilities? In war and conquest, in building railroad system, gas chambers and crematoriums, a system, complex system to annihilate and torture millions of innocent people. While human reason is a very powerful thing, if it's left to its own subjective devices without the humility and subservient to a God above, human beings are capable of rationalizing and justifying the most despicable and destructive behaviors imaginable. When people and societies are not bound by a set of moral absolute and joined by a just and compassionate Creator, the Master of the world, such as the universal codes of ethics, the seven Noahide laws, then fickle and finite human beings will find a way to do the most absurd and preposterous behaviors and cloak them in virtue. The greatest victim of hate is lies, is truth. Lies are the favorite tool of choice of purveyors of hate, giving them a license to vilify, denigrate, and destroy. So after the Holocaust, we figured, finally, anti-Semitism will be something of the past. Surely the slaughter of 6 million Jews and 1.5 million innocent babies, children, would have stemmed and satisfied the haters' appetite for spilling Jewish blood. Surely the sense of shame of the atrocities committed against Joe Alexander and his family will prevent anyone from ever again invoking lies and libels that brought so much misery and destruction, not just for the Jewish people, but for the entire world. Yet here we are in 2023, and anti-Semitism has reared its ugly head. All over the world, but here in America, verbal and physical attacks have become a new norm against Jews. Just 2 weeks ago, white supremacies and neo-Nazi groups right here in the United States, the land of the free, unabashedly called for a national day of hate. Pathetic, outrageous, and laughable. Yet, once again, those were the ugly lies that led in the 30s to Kristallnacht. Each and every day, new lies and libels are leveled against Israel, the only Jewish state in the world, the only democracy in the Middle East. This past year, and perhaps every single year that I can recall, the UN General Assembly passed more resolutions condemning Israel than all other countries combined, including such peace and loving countries as Iran, Syria, North Korea, China, Russia, and Cuba. What was Israel's crimes? Trying to protect its people from those who seek to destroy its civilians. But unlike in 1930, we have an army, and we could fight back. The world may not like it. But if it's one thing we learned from the Holocaust, we prefer to be alive than be liked. And while Israel will do anything to make peace with its neighbors, one thing we won't do, we won't roll over and die. Which brings me back to our guest speaker. Over the years, Joe Alexander has made it his crusade to share his story and speak out against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, which very often is the same. I could only imagine, Joe, what it means to go back to those dark times, recounting and reliving those horrors over and over again. But Joe feels it's his moral duty. It's his way of honoring the memories of those loved ones who perish by awakening human beings to the pitfalls of hate and helping ensure that the Holocaust will never happen again. This is his way of avenging what was done to him and his family. You see, the ultimate revenge is not achieved with anger, bitterness, destruction, but with love, compassion, reconstruction, life, vitality. Throughout the Jewish history, the way we responded to irrational evil was irrational goodness. For all the darkness that the evildoers try to plunge humanity in. Our response was to elevate humanity by kindling light, more light, more light, and still more light. As the people charged with being a light into the nation, that is our mission in this world. Love, light, truth, goodness, sanctity. These are the building blocks for making this world a place in which our Creator can feel welcome and proud. On that note, it's my honor to introduce a beacon of light, a humble hero, a voice of conscience, and a champion of courage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of honor, Mr. Joseph Alexander.
Thank you, everybody. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here tonight. My name is Joe Alexander. I'm a Holocaust survivor from Poland, and I survived 12 camps. I come from a small town in Poland. My father was in business, and we had a very good life until 1939, when the Germans came into Poland. They divided Poland in two halves. One half was annexed to the Third Reich, to Germany. The second half was Poland under German occupation. We lived in the part where it was annexed to the Third Reich, and we lived, and most of you, I guess, know, Europe, every town has a town square, and that's where most of the business are. We lived in the town square. The second house of one corner of the square, and the third house was an uncle of mine. After a few weeks, the Germans came to town, and I went after my uncle around the square and told the people they have 10 minutes to get their possessions and get out in the middle of the square, and they took them away. A rumor started that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. For some reason, I will never know why they left those three houses where we were the second house on the square. So a rumor started that they're going to come back 3 days later and take the rest of us. My father had three sisters living in the second half of Poland, 25 kilometers before Warsaw. So that said, we're not going to wait for them to come and give us 10 minutes to get out. So he went out and he rented a wagon. We had deep wagons, 6, 8 feet deep, horse-drawn wagon. Got a wagon, and we packed up most of the store, from the clothes, from the stuff from the store, and we put a few pieces of bedding on top and a couple pieces of furniture, because from our part to the other part, you had to go through a border. So like moving. So my parents and one sister and one brother, they left, and I remained with two older sisters, and we were loading up a second wagon. In the meantime, we had the Polish people coming to town to buy anything they can get, because it took the business people out, so they want to buy anything they can get. So I sold a man a bicycle and a boat of shirt material. On the way home, he had to pass the police station, So he got stopped and wanted to know where did he get that material. So he said, I bought it. Then show me a receipt. He said, I don't have a receipt. Then go bring the person who sold it to you. So he came back to me and said, you have to come with me. If not, they're going to come here. And we had a second wagon loaded to go. So I went with him, and he asked me, did you sell him that? I said, yes. Why didn't you give him a receipt? I said, we in Poland, we didn't give a receipt. So I took the boat of material, smacked the guy, and let him go and let me go. And I went back, and my sisters waited for me, and we took off. And we went to a town named Blonia, about 25 kilometers before Warsaw. We came there. Their life was going on almost normal. Everybody was still in business, but everybody has to go to work. Being there, that was in 1939, that's when I went to my first camp. I went to a camp where we were building a canal. You stayed in the water up to the knee without boots, and that was October, November. That's already around winter time. So I worked there for about 6 weeks, and that's the camp I work where you work during the week. On the weekend, you can go home. So I worked there about 6 weeks, and I got blood poison. I had sores on my arms, sores on my legs. So after about 6 weeks, I went home on the weekend, and I said, I'm not going back. So Monday morning, the police came to look for me, and my dad said, he's not here, he's supposed to be in the camp. So I stayed away from home for quite a while now, and that was the time when they started to build a wall in Warsaw, where the Warsaw Ghetto was going to be. So after they were through building the wall, they came out and ordered all the Jews who live within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Warsaw had to move into the Warsaw Ghetto. So we moved into the ghetto. The life in the ghetto, you can't even imagine how terrible it was, because the section they picked out for the ghetto was a very small section, and they put in over 400,000 people. People were dying every day, morning, night, everywhere you went. So I lived in the ghetto about 5 months, and we found out that back home, nothing changed since we left. So my parents decided for an older sister and a younger brother and I, we should go back home. So to go home, you have to get out of the ghetto. So he paid off the guards at the gate to get out. And we decided my sister and brother would take one street, and I'll take another street. And we walked through town. We meet on the outskirts of town. I walked for about 2 or 3 blocks, and I had a Polish teenager comes over and said, give me some money or I'm going to report you. So I figured I gave him some money and I got rid of him, and I kept walking. He got on the streetcar, rode the streetcar for about 3 blocks, and he said, comes over again, give me some more money. So this time I gave him some more money, but I changed the street and I lost him. Lost him, I walked to the outskirts of town, and I met my sister and brother, and we went home. So we came back home. It's like I say, everything was the same since we left. Nothing has changed. But there's less than 3 days I was free for it. After being there for 3 days, they came out and said, all the men from 16 to 60 report to the schoolhouse. So I reported to the schoolhouse, and off I went to the camps. The first camp I went to, we were building a dam. We cut down hills and had little electric cars to fill them up, and they take them another place and dump it. The work was a very hard work, because we had to use picks to loosen up the ground. And the food you were getting was a piece of bread like this in the morning and a cup of coffee, and you went to work. You came back from work, you got a soup. The soup was from the peels of potatoes or spinach. Doing that kind of work with this food, you couldn't survive. And I was in a city named Poznan, and there were a lot of camps in the city and around the city. So the same thing happened in other camps. People were dying. Every morning they took dead people out. So the camp were getting small. So they closed the camp, and the same thing happened in other camps. So they combined 2-3 camps into one. After a short time, the same thing at the other camps. After that camp, I went to a camp in the city, and we were laying cobblestones. That lasted about 3 weeks. Then I moved to another camp. We were building sewers. And that lasted a short time. I will move to another camp where there was a roofer. We're doing roofs. After that, I went to another camp. We were building an airport. I was laying railroad tracks. After being in 7 camps already, a train arrived, and it wasn't a passenger train, you know, the cattle car train. They put 40, 50 people to one boxcar, and the destination we were going, it takes 5-6 hours at the most. We were riding around for 3 days, no food, no water, no facilities. Finally, we arrived in Auschwitz. Came to Auschwitz, there's a little town named Oswiecim. So that's when the train stopped there. Later on, they built the trains to go straight into the camp. But when I came, they didn't have that yet. So we stopped in downtown Auschwitz. They opened the doors from the train. 30-40% of the people were dead on the train already. Whoever could walk, you walked out, and you were lined up in rows of 5, and I met Dr. Joseph Mengele. Dr. Mengele was called the Doctor of Death. He selected people for human experiments or for the gas chamber. So Dr. Mengele said, there's 6 kilometers to walk to the camp. So he's going to select people to go to the left, and the people on the left are going to be taken on trucks. So he went through and picked out sick people, old people, young kids, and I was a little guy, so he picked me out too to go to the left. But I came to the left, I looked around, and I said, I saw sick people, old people, and I said, that's not the kind of people I like to be with. If I would come from home, I would know the difference. But I was already in 7 camps. Excuse me. I was in 7 camps, and most of the time in the camps I went to work, I was trying to get in to the biggest, strongest man. So I looked around, I see that's not the kind of people I like to be with. But my luck was, it was after midnight. With daytime, I don't think I could have done it. I'm sorry. So after he moved further down, I ran back to the other side. If I didn't run back to the other side, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. Because the people on the left were taken on trucks. They went straight to the gas chamber. In the morning, we found out that that's where these people went. So I went to Auschwitz, and I got a shower, and came out of the shower, and I got a tattoo. don't know if you can see it here. I got a tattoo, 142584. From that moment on, that was your name. You had no name anymore. So I got a tattoo, and then there's Auschwitz II, which is called Birkenau, about 3 kilometers apart. Then, and I walked after tattoo, I walked to Birkenau. Came to Birkenau. I was in Birkenau for quite some time. I was there about 5 months. And I saw Dr. Mengele 2 more times in Birkenau, but it was daytime, and I was far away from where he was. So I got through that. And that was the time, in April of 1943, there was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. After the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, they said they need a big transport, but they don't want to take people from Poland. They only want people from Hungary, Greece, Italy. But on the end, they were short about 300 people, the quota they wanted. So they said, now we pack some people from Poland. So I report, and I was going back to the Warsaw Ghetto for the second time. So I came back, the same thing, riding back to Warsaw. It took us about 3 days with no food, no water, nothing. And we came back. There wasn't one house left. All the houses were burned out, just the remaining walls from the houses. And there was no camp. They gave us some prefab that we had to put our camps together. And meantime, and our job was to take down those remaining walls brick by brick and clean them up in stacks of 8 to 10 feet high. So that's the kind of work. And then, in meantime, the typhus broke out. Anybody I knew who went to the hospital report never came out, never saw anybody. Typhus is where you get high fever, high temperature. I got it, but I didn't report to the hospital because I had what we called a couple, like a foreman. He was a middle-aged German man, but he was also a prisoner. So he didn't care if we worked or didn't work. So when I got it, I was sticking behind those bricks, like my arms crossed over like this for about 3 days until I got over the temperature and went back to work. After I went back to worked for a while, the Polish underground attacked our camp one night and trying to free us. So they fought all night, but they were unsuccessful. They couldn't do it. So the next morning, they closed the camp and took us out. So we had to jog to get out of the city. They said they were afraid that the underground may attack us in the city. So we jogged to get out, and they put us up on a field where the farmers graze their cows, and the ground is very moist. So when they put us up on the field, whatever means you have, a knife, a spoon, anything, you could dig up some mud, and you took the bottom of your shirt and you squeezed to get a little water. So got a little water, and the next morning we're on a march. Come to the city, and there was a river. So they let us go to the river to get some water. So went to the river, got some water, and 2 of our people went a little further into the river. They got shot. They got killed right in the river. So now we got water, and we were marching again. Come to the next town, was the same river. They said there's only 100 people at a time this time can go to the river to get some water. But that day, it was a very heavy rain was coming down. We were walking, you couldn't even walk. You were soaking wet. You could hardly walk. until we arrived at the railroad station. We stayed overnight, and the next morning the same train arrived, and we got on the train, and this time we were 3.5 days on the train, and we went to Germany to a camp named Dachau. Dachau was the first camp Hitler built in 1933 for political prisoners. Then he turned it into a concentration camp. So I was in Dachau for about 2 weeks doing nothing, because they were establishing 12 camps within 50, 60 kilometers in the surrounding area of Dachau, all by number from 1 to 12. So after about 2 weeks, I was sent to camp number 1, and I was working for a farmer with digging potatoes. That lasted about 3 weeks. Then I was sent to another camp about 50 kilometers to a city named Landsberg am Lech. And that was camp number 7. Camp number 7 was a small camp. We were only about 150 people. And that was the only camp I was where women were in the same camp, but they blocked off one corner of the camp by a wire fence, and we went to work together. So in camp number 7, we were a small group. We were in the camp over 4 years already. So we had the privilege of getting the better jobs. So friends of mine got the job in the kitchen. Some of them were the police in this camp. And I got a group of 10 people. We were 5 girls and 5 boys, and worked in the kitchen for the German guards outside the camp. And there were 2 German men in charge of the kitchen, but they were very good men, very good to me. Every day after I went back to the camp, I took back food for my friends, and we always had some soup left over. So we had some big milk cans. I took a milk can and put it in. The next morning, people were going to work. They had to pass by our kitchen. I stopped them and gave them some food. And that lasted about 5 or 6 weeks. A couple of times, the officer in charge of the guards complained that I'm holding up the people going to work. So my people told me, don't worry, let them talk, do what you're doing. So I did it, and then that was about until April 28, 1945. All the 12 camps, we had to go back to Dachau. Going back to Dachau, stayed overnight, and the next morning, what they called, we were going on a death march. They're supposed to take us to the mountains in Germany. There's a ski resort named Garmisch, and they're supposed to kill us there in the mountain. But we walked about 2 days. We knew we're not going to be walking too far, because we could hear the fighting. So we knew that the American troops are not far behind us. So I walked about 2 days and passed a little bridge, and that little bridge was blowing up. Bridge was blowing up, and I was in a village where there was a little forest. So they took us into the forest and asked for volunteers to take the sick people into the farmers and put them into the barn, and told the volunteers to come back. One of the volunteers was a friend of mine. Oh, I got some pictures. A friend of mine. Here, let me show you something. Here's a picture of, this is a friend of mine. That's him here. His name was Joe Buddha. So on the way back, they found a dead horse in the snow. So they cut up some pieces from the horse, and my friend comes back with a big piece of meat and said, do something. So we were in the forest, the wood. I made a fire, and I was barbecuing. And believe me, that was the best meal we had in a long time. And during the night, the guards disappeared. Next morning, the German police came, and they took us into that village, and they disappeared. That was in the morning between about 8 and 9 o'clock. So we're just walking around that village and see what's going to happen next. So I walked away there until about between 12 and 1 o'clock. The American tank moved in, and we were liberated. And behind the tank, were the American troops. So they're trying to block off the village, not to let anybody out. But we were a group of 9 of us. We were in the camps after 5 years. We didn't want to get blocked in. So we broke through and started to walk to see where the next town is. We walked for about 1 or 2 kilometers. There was a bakery. So we got into the bakery and everybody got a bread. You had a bread, you were okay. And we started to walk and come to a city named Bad Tölz. And we see 3 American soldiers, but they were Czechoslovakian descent. I guess the clothes we were wearing, and they asked, are you Polish? I said, yes. So I said, come on. So they took us in to an underground bunker. You couldn't see the end of it. So everything was in that bunker. So first thing, we changed clothes. Everybody took a backpack and put some food in. And there was a big row of bicycles chained up. They broke the chain, and everybody got a bicycle. But when the American troops came into the village, they brought all the people into that city. There used to be a German Air Force base. They made a DP camp, a displaced person camp. But we didn't want to go to a camp. So we're trying to get out, find a place to stay. So try to get out. The city, you couldn't go because it was after 6 o'clock, and 6 o'clock was curfew. So we hopped over about 3 or 4 fences, and we came to a German inn, but it was taken over by the American troops. And in the back of the inn was an empty house, so we moved into the house. So we stayed in the house about 10 days, and then they came out and ordered anybody who lives outside of the camp has to move into the camp. So we moved into the camp, and I was taken back to another camp in Munich, also a DP camp in Munich. But you are free. You could live at the camp, or you can go any place you want. So I lived in the camp there for 3 days. And then we decided, a few friends of mine, we were in camp number 7 together, decided to go back to the city of Landsberg, where camp number 7 was. And at that time, Landsberg was one of the largest DP camps. There are a lot of DP camps in Germany. Landsberg was one of the largest in Germany. So we went back there and went to the camp to register. They gave me a room, and I stayed overnight. And the next morning, I moved out about 7 kilometers to a farm, and I lived in a farmhouse. You know, the reason, like I said, I don't want to live in a camp. We went to the camp to register, so we go to all the camps in case any of your family survived. So when everybody went to look through the lists. So I moved out, and I lived in a farmhouse. And for about 6 weeks, and then I decided to go back to Poland to my hometown, to my house, to see if any of my family survived. And when I got out of the Warsaw Ghetto, I left my parents, 2 sisters, and 1 brother in the Warsaw Ghetto. And I still don't, to today, I don't know what happened to them. So I went home back, come to the house, and there were survivors living on the 2nd floor. On the 1st floor were Polish people, but they said nobody from my immediate family survived. 1 cousin of mine survived, which I was separated from him. I was with him and 2 of his uncles, his father's brothers, in Auschwitz, when Dr. Mengele told me to go to the left. Matter of fact, that's him here. His name was Mark Alexander. We have the same last name. He survived, but he's in a different town. So that time, it was very bad for survivors who came back. Polish people were killing a lot of survivors. When they took the Jews out from the homes, they moved into the homes. And now some of the survivors that come back, they didn't want to give up the homes. So they were killing a lot of survivors. In one town named Kielce, they killed 42 survivors. So it was very bad. So the Polish people who live in my house asked me if I'm going to stay, they'll move out. I said, don't bother. I'm not staying. I went and get my cousin. Told you, he was in a different town. I went to get my cousin, and we went back to Germany. Came back to Germany, and I lived in Germany for 4 more years after liberation. And that was the best place you could be at the time. Because I lived 4 years there, I didn't have a passport. I couldn't go anyplace. I had to wait till some country opens up. So after 4 years, Canada opened up and said they would take some people. So I went to register, and then you have to wait until they call you. So it took a long time, didn't hear from them. So in the meantime, another friend of mine lived in the next village. He came, he said, now you can go to Munich and you can register to go to America. So I went to Munich and I registered. In a very short time, I had a note to go to get checked out by the American doctor and the FBI to check you out. And then a couple of weeks or so, I got a notice to go to Bremerhaven. That's a port in Germany where the boat was to come to America. So I went and I got on a boat and came to America. Arrived in New York, so everybody had to have a sponsor. Either you had relatives or Jewish organization or anybody to sponsor you. I didn't have any relatives here, so I was sponsored by a Jewish organization named Joint. My contract was Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I went to Harrisburg, and I got a job as a tailor for a man who had a cleaning store and tuxedo rental. And a father couldn't be better than this man was to me. So I worked there for about six weeks. And my cousin who survived, I came in May and he came in October. So he came to California. His uncle was living in California, Santa Monica. And he told him that I am in Pennsylvania. So the uncle called me a few times. I should come here so we can be together. So we were, the 2 of us, the only ones from both of our families. So I came to Los Angeles in 1950. And I've been in Los Angeles. And then in Los Angeles, excuse me, I lived in Los Angeles for a while, actually, and then I moved that was 1950, I moved to a city named, I don't know, Victorville, if anyone's familiar with some. About 100 miles from Los Angeles. It used to be a German Air Force base during World War II. In 1946, they closed the base because the Korean War started. They mobilized the National Guard, so they had to go through there and get outfitted and sent out to Korea. So I got there and I got a contract for a tailor shop. So I had a tailor shop there in Victorville. And I was in Victorville for about 7 years. And then I was used to go to Los Angeles almost every weekend. So after 7 years, I decided I'd go to Los Angeles and open a store in Los Angeles. So I got a partner, and we opened a store in Los Angeles, a military store selling military uniforms. It was called the Los Angeles Uniform Exchange. So I was in that business in Los Angeles for 37 years, and then I retired in 1994. But then, let me tell you, I forgot to tell you, when I was in Birkenau, I saw people running to the electric fence to get electrocuted. I saw people being beaten to death because they gave up. So when I talk to kids here, the high school kids, they ask me, did you ever give up? Did you ever think of giving up? I said, no, I never did. I never lost faith, and I never stopped believing in God. And I said to them, I may have a bad day today, but I hope tomorrow will be a better day. But never give up. That's what I tell them. I also been in 3 camps where I had to witness people being hung 3 times. People trying to escape, and they got cut. So on Sunday, we had to gather around to watch them being hung. That happened to me for 3 times. So now, here I am, and if anybody has any question for me, I'll be happy to answer you.
Thank you so much, Joe. That was amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Oh, wait a minute. No, I shall. I'll have a drink, maybe too.
Okay, before we go to the Q&A,
Rabbi,
yeah.
one more minute.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to show you.
Okay,
This is the way we lived in
zoom
the
in.
camps. They were like shelves. And as you can see here, one section was for 3 people. On the second row on the bottom, at the end here, you can see it right here. It was Elie Wiesel. You know, he was a Holocaust survivor. He's got a Nobel Prize here. He wrote a lot of books about the Holocaust. That's him right here.
Okay, so before we go to the Q&A, I want to encourage everyone to fill out that card. Remember I mentioned it? So in order to encourage you to fill it out, we're going to raffle off a few $100. Okay, so we want to get you guys to do it. So there'll be a few volunteers. If I could have the volunteers after the Anima Amin by the musicians, if everyone could wait till after we're done. If you could go to the doors and hand it over to one of the volunteers. So we have a few questions, Joe. And since we have a few extra minutes, some of the questions were given to us before the event. Is there a Carrie Smith here? I'm not going to be able to see you. Is there a little kid named Carrie Smith? Or someone over there? Okay, so come up here. Come up here. I'm going to ask you to ask the question in a moment, okay? Okay, so here's one of the questions I was given. As a mother of a 14-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl, I'd like to know what Mr. Alexander feels is the most important lesson I can take away as a parent, and what he feels our kids today can learn from his experience.
Well, two young kids, the only thing they can learn from is when I talk to the high school kids, they're about their same age, is the only way we can prevent is through education. We have to educate the young people. They are our future. We have to educate them. And the only other thing is there's a lot of Holocaust deniers. And Holocaust is anti-Semitism. The Holocaust deniers, I call them, they're crazy. Because the evidence is still in existence today. They go to the camps today, to Auschwitz, Dachau, Majdanek, Treblinka, all the camps. The gas chambers and the ovens are still there. You go there, every day there's buses, people from all over the world coming to witness that. That's why I call the Holocaust deniers, they're crazy. And I say, if you hear anything, something is not right, don't be afraid to report to the authorities.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Just by the way, Joe, I love your suit. And if you're still making suits, I want to take an order.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a young girl here. You want to come up and maybe ask him the question? But introduce yourself, okay? And tell us where you're from as well.
My name is Annalise Smith, and I'm from Post Falls, Idaho. And my question is, what was the food like in the camps?
What? What the few lessons?
Food in the camp.
Oh, the food in the camp? Well, I'll tell you, the food in the camps was a piece of bread like this in the morning and a cup of coffee, and you got a soup. What it was from the peels of potatoes or spinach. That was the food. You have.
That's not a lot of food.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you my cell phone. Okay, be careful. When you text me, I have your number, just remember. Okay, but I'm brave enough. I've done this before. Okay, so I'm going to select some questions from here and some from, I'm going to give opportunity to select first come, first serve from my phone. So here we go. If you're ready to text, 509-990-7878. Okay, you could send me a text. Let's see what comes up. Okay, and meanwhile, we'll ask the following question. How were you able to cope daily with seeing and hearing the suffering of those around you?
How you feel with someone? Well, we had friends. We were getting after work, even getting around. And we just, life going on. There's nothing else, nothing we can do about it. Just trying to make the best of it, to survive. That's how the feeling, that's what it was.
Okay, here's another question from Netanya Gallinger. If I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. Did you ever save someone from harm?
Ever escape?
Did you ever save someone from harm?
Saved anyone?
From
No.
harm.
No, I never saved anybody.
But he didn't put them in harm's way.
Yeah.
Okay, another question. How did your experience, Joe, how did your experience strengthen or weaken your faith?
To retain my faith, well, like I told you before, I never lost hope, and I never stopped believing in God. That's how I guess survived. God, with the help of God. Because when Dr. Mengele told me to go to the left, so see, God told me to go to the right.
One more question. What kept you so hopeful?
What
What kept you hopeful?
kept me hopeful because I wanted to survive. I just wanted to survive. And like I say, with the help of God, He made me survive. He wanted me to survive.
Okay, we're still getting some questions. Okay. I'm getting a lot of questions. They want to know about your family. So tell them a little bit about your family, when you got married, children, etc.
Yes, I was married. I was married for 38 years, and my wife, unfortunately, got cancer and passed away.
Right.
But I have a daughter and a son and a grandson.
Okay. We're getting a lot of questions. We're going to have to filter through them. Okay. Okay, here's an interesting question. How did you feel about the German civilians after the war?
I mean, after the war. Well, I've lived in Germany, for 4 more years after the war, but I had no problem. I had no problem, and especially today, Germany is not the same Germany. They are very more liberal, and actually they all today more Western. They're actually, most of them are very close to Israel. So it's a different German today. I was back in 2015. I was invited by the German government to come back to celebrate 70 years the liberation of Dachau. I went back, and I was in Dachau about 5 days. I was there with my girlfriend, Riva, sitting here somewhere.
Round of applause to Riva, please. Round of applause. Joe couldn't make it's with Riva's help that Joe's able to join us tonight. Thank you, Riva.
I went back, and I met, if you can see here, I have a couple of pictures. If some people will recognize who it is. Anybody recognize this person? It was Angela Merkel. She was the Chancellor of Germany. And I spoke to her in Dachau, as you can see. And we were treated, you couldn't ask for better treatment. And they paid for everything. Sure.
Okay, one more question they asked. I'm seeing repeated questions. Did you ever go back to the camps?
Yeah.
Did you ever go back to visit the camps?
You ever go back? Yes, I went back several times. As a matter of fact, the first time I went back And 2004, I went back with the river. And we went to the camps. And you know, the funny thing, when I came back to the camps, I came to Auschwitz and Dachau, they're the same both camps. People ask me, why did you come back? So, you know, I told him, I came back because I survived. Hitler didn't. Then I went back a second time in 2011. I took my daughter and her husband, the same camps. They took her to the town where I grew up, was born. So I was back several times.
Okay. Okay, this will end our Q&A part of the evening. We're going to continue to the last part of our evening. We're going to introduce a special song followed by musical, and we'll conclude the evening right after that.
Dark clouds began to cover the skies of Europe, the clouds of Nazism. And as they invaded Warsaw, they moved Jews, men, women, and children into the ghettos. Slowly, over time, the ghettos began to empty. Even the birds stopped singing, as if they knew what came next. The trains of doom filled with the innocent and the pure, carrying them to their deaths. And it was on one such train headed to the death camp Treblinka, in the midst of the terror, the gasping, the weeping, and the despair, that a lone voice was heard singing. His name was Azriel David Fastig, the cantor of the saintly Momentous Rebbe, Rabbi Shaul Yedidya Elisar. People thought he had lost his mind, but Azriel's heavenly and sweet voice continued its soulful tune. There he was, face aglow, eyes squeezed tight with concentration, fixated upon the words of one of the 13 principles of the Jewish faith, Ani Ma'amin. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of Mashiach, the final redemption. Gradually, the hundreds of listening ears joined his song, at first quietly, but slowly growing louder and louder. Soon the song spread from car to car, and every mouth that could still draw a breath joined in Azriel's haunting melody, Ani Ma'amin. His eyes red from crying and his cheeks wet with tears. Cantor Fastig tore a piece off of his own shirt and jotted down the notes of his new composition. There he proclaimed, I will give half my share in the world to come to the person who will take my song to my saintly teacher, the Momentous Rebbe, who had escaped to the shores of the United States. A hushed silence descended upon the train, and two young men appeared, promising to bring the song to the Rebbe at any cost. Bidding farewell to their brothers and sisters, they jumped out of a hole they broke in the train's roof. One miraculously survived, and clutching dearly to the shirt, kept the melody alive. It was on Yom Kippur, just after the war, on the holiest day on the Jewish calendar, and the Momentous Rebbe's synagogue in New York was filled with thousands upon thousands. As the Rebbe began singing the Ani Ma'amin, the crowd wept bitterly, swaying back and forth as if in a different world. He trembled and declared, on their journey to the gas chambers, this song was born from the ashes of millions. And it will be with this song that the Jewish people will march as they greet Mashiach, the final redemption.
עם כל זה אחכה אלוהי עם כל זה אני מאמין
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. Matvey Waleski, Amanda Howard, Phillips, and Jeanette Weyoung, and Helen Byrne. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us tonight. And I hope you could join us in further presentations. I also want to apologize. The lines were very long outside, and it was raining and cold. And God willing, in the future, we'll find a way to make this a little bit easier for those people who were waiting outside. And everyone, please, a big round of applause to Mr. Joe Alexander and Reva.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you.
I want to thank our sponsors for the evening tonight, Vista Corporation and Novia Foundation once again, and Washington Trust, Holly Troxel for their co-sponsorship. I want to wish you all a wonderful evening. Please send us your feedback. Please fill out those little cards. Take a moment. It only takes 20 seconds. Watch, I'm timing. And give it to our volunteers. If we could have some volunteers. And everyone have a wonderful evening. We should only meet in happy occasion. Sure, sure.
We're here.